Okay, so the first question is, you've worked on admissions committees at more than one school, yes?
Yes.
So how are they different? Like, do they look at applications differently, or is there kind of a cohesive way that a read is approached amongst institutions?
There are a lot of similarities. Everyone's working from a file. And so there's this hope that everything is complete. All of the recommendation letters are there, and all the sections are there, and everything is well formatted. And so there's this first pass that is very common across schools. And then there are these nuances because schools have different personalities. And there are some schools that have a personality that more focuses on introspection. And so those schools may focus a little bit more on the personal statement and the kinds of thinking that are happening. There's other schools that have more of a personality around leadership. And those schools may focus a little bit more on extracurriculars, those first couple, captain of the debate team, editor of the student newspaper, creating and leading this multi-year startup or nonprofit that actually does something local. You can all raise money and donate it to some international organization, but what are you doing in the 4 blocks around where you live? There's need. It's finding that need. That's leadership. There's other schools, I'm thinking of a lot of the NESCAC schools that really value this individuality, doing something different. Dartmouth, that's part of its ethos. Not that duct tape is the solution to all things, but there is that sort of duct tape ethos of being able to be independent and solving problems by yourself, leading and solving and creating. That's part of Dartmouth's DNA. And so that each school's DNA, its personality, that's part of the lens, the filter that I would read those essays, because I'm getting a lot of feedback from other admission officers that, yeah, we really value this. And so I take on those values.
Yeah, I think we call it culture and fit at Sigma, that kind of like DNA personality. And I feel like it's really, really overlooked, especially in the case of international applicants. Domestically, there's also, of course, people who look only at rankings, but at least in the FGLI community, I feel like we've kind of really paid attention to the general orientation of the school. But abroad, oftentimes, or at least in Korea, that's what I can speak for, it is down the list. Okay, I'm applying for something humanities. Where do my ECs align with? And then what's the highest ranked school I can go to? Okay, Cornell. And there's no thought of like, do I want to live in Ithaca? Or do I like a very big school with a lot of people? That's like the kind of thing that I think we really care about at Sigma, is letting kids know that it's not like a factory or like some kind of artificial matching where it's just like, oh, you have these stats and these ECs, thus you must apply here. Which is better from your personal perspective? A harmonious application with a concept that makes sense, but little glamorous ECs, maybe Olympiads or giant startup nonprofits. Option 2, lots of glamorous ECs, but no story. I know the answer, but I would love to hear your take on it as to why.
I think if I had to choose, my sense is I would probably enjoy reading an application from option 1 that is really this student's life and their or her or his perspective and their views. And not everybody can have these fantastic opportunities. And one thing that I've really become good at is multiplication. And on that EC list, if I multiply weeks per year and hours per week, and I'm starting to back out, and this is the equivalent of 3 full-time jobs. The full-time job I know is 2,000 hours. And this is something like 3,000 or 4,000 hours, annual hours of this activity and that activity. Who can do that? I can't. And that's not my standard. Pick one thing. If knitting is that student's thing and they knit for others, it's wonderful. I love that. And how knitting teaches them to deal with mistakes. You can always unravel, I suppose, knitting and start over. It's not fun. You can do it So it could be a metaphor. It doesn't have to be exactly about crocheting. That's interesting because it's authentic. Now, if a student has had amazing opportunities for whatever reason, as long as it doesn't read as privilege, or at the very least, an acknowledgement of privilege, how did they take that opportunity and privilege and gain perspective and utilize those opportunities and that privilege for the service of others? If it comes across as meaningful, that's great. But if it's a formula, this many AMCs plus this many computer science Olympiads, mix it in with 4 APs, it's formulaic and it's sort of factory made. And this is certainly an industry, it's certainly a process, and it's an incredibly stressful 9 months or 12 months of a student's life. And ultimately, it is a very personal choice where there's lots of good options. And so the entire process, if it's personal, it just reads as so much more authentic.